Hi, it's Stephen here at Bland Designs, and lately I've become very interested in videos showing how to make a junk journal. If you don't know what a junk journal is, it's simply that's what it is. It's junk. You just take leftover scrapbooking paper, jelly printed paper, whatever, and put it all together and make it into a journal. So this is my take on this. What I did first of all is I located a bunch of jelly print papers that I had laying around that I was going to tear up into scraps and use in other projects at one point in time, but I've never gotten around to it. And I've also located some bits and pieces of scrapbook paper, from my scraps pile. And what I'm doing is I've made them all, with the exception of the more narrow strips that you just saw there, 8.5 by 11 size sheets, and then I folded them in half so that they become a double page, and a page measures 5.5 inches by 8.5. So the overall dimensions of my junk journal are going to be 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So I'm just taking random sheets of paper here, as I said, folding them in half and getting them into the size. And I decided too that I had some atlas pages that I want to use, but they were kind of big, so I'm using my paper trimmer here to cut those down into the size that'll fit into the junk journal. Now you may have also noticed, I know it went by fairly quickly, that there were some strips of paper that were a little smaller, and again they're going to be bound into this junk journal. They'll make interesting variations on pages. So it's a junk journal. It's a way of using up a lot of your scraps and that kind of thing. So I'll let you continue watching this process here for the second of me cutting down the pages. And then the next stage of this is going to be getting everything together in terms of putting it into one large signature. If you don't know what a signature is, if you open up any book that's been stitched, you'll find groups of pages So what I'm doing now is I'm just getting all the pages aligned with each other, just laying them one on top of the other, and you see that I have my center gutter as well, which is where that will be the spine of my book. I'm not putting any kind of special cover on this. I just chose one of the sheets of paper that I have there in my pile that's a little stiffer than the others, and that's the one I'm going to use as the front and back cover. And you can see I'm putting in here all the little pieces as well. So at the moment I'm just figuring out the order, and I'm not giving it a lot of thought. Things are going in them pretty much randomly. So the next thing that I'm doing is I'm punching holes in each one of the sheets, which are going to be my stitching holes. And I'm using an awl for this and a pad underneath it. And so my first page I'm using as my template for figuring out where to punch the holes in the other pages. Now, if I was doing this as a formal journal kind of binding process, I would be much more accurate in the placement of my holes. But for this, it's just a junk journal, so not a big deal. And I'm not going to be doing any very elaborate stitching here either. As you will see, I'm simply using some waxed thread, and I gave it a little extra wax when I ran it through my wax block. It just makes it pull through a little nicer, and a large tapestry needle. The kind of thing that has a relatively blunt end but has a big eye hole, so it's easy to thread with this binding twine that I'm using. And I'm simply going to go down through the center hole and out the back, then up through the top hole, and then all the way down out through the bottom hole, and then bring it back through the center hole, and then take the two free ends of the thread, pull it tight, and tie it in a knot, and that's it. It's done. So I decided now to start decorating the outside, the cover of the book. But before I do that, I'm taking this piece of cotton ribbon, or it's kind of a woven twill or something like that, and I'm just running it down the spine, inside spine of my book, pulling it around the outside cover and tying it in a knot. That will just give a little bit more reinforcement to my spine, and it adds a decorative touch. So I'm just tying a bow here with it and cutting off the ends. And then I'm gathering a few things that I want to put on the cover. And again, I'm not really thinking about this too much. I'm just looking in my stash of leftover things. And I found a couple of printed pieces, a flower that actually I cut out with my Cricut. Was actually originally a print on a piece of material that I scanned and then cut out. And then the two butterflies that I found are also cut out of a piece of scrap material, again with the Cricut. That's probably a video all on its own. And I also was experimenting with cutting chipboard, in this case back of a cereal box, on my Cricut, and it's got my name, so I thought, well, what the heck, let's use that on the cover as well. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just inking up the edges of each of these little pieces that I'm going to apply to the cover, and I'm going to stick them down with matte medium. And I'm going to take the little my name piece in chipboard, and I'm going to cover it in embossing fluid, the kind of thing that comes like in a Versamark pad, except I'm using it in liquid format. And I'm just going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder, heat it up, and that's going to give it sort of a metallic look, and then stick it down with some glue to the cover as well. And I let it dry for a little bit too, because it is a fairly heavy piece, so I let it sit under some weights for about half an hour until it dried. So I decided now at this point to show you how I'm going to use this junk journal in the future. And so I just gathered a few random pieces together. I had a picture of myself. It was taken when I was teaching schools, probably about 10 years old. I don't know, I found it in a box. And I also found my wedding day picture as well. And so I'm going to use those as my focal images. And I'm just going to do some stamping on the background papers that are here, and I'm going to stick down the pictures, and I've grabbed some little bits and pieces of ephemera and some washi tape, and I'm just putting it down. I'm not thinking about where these things are going. I'm just going to see what the end result is. I find this is very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. There's no tension here to create a masterpiece. It's just a great exercise in freedom, really. So as I said earlier, it's a way of getting rid of your artist's block, I think, by doing this. So you can watch this to the end here and see how this page develops. So here's a close-up of the final product, and as I said, my first page is in my junk journal, and I did put this video on very fast forward, as you can tell, because there's a bit of a lag in my commentary with some of the pictures, but I thought it was better to show it at this speed than to drag it out to over an hour long. This way it's under 12 minutes. But you get the idea of a